Good morning. Good morning. It's early, isn't it? It's 9 o'clock. 8 o'clock in Chicago. 6 o'clock in Los Angeles. It's early. Yeah, I know. Get up.
On a holiday.
On a holiday day of all days.
Of all days.
Well, I'm working.
I'm not. This is fun for me.
How much of a holiday is this? I got to go to work later. I'll be there until like 9 o'clock, so I'm not sure how much of a holiday that is. Glad to have a job, I guess. Woohoo!
Praise the Lord.
Woohoo! Yes, working. This is Real Talk with Deb and Will. We've been talking about this for a few weeks. Actually, this has been in my wife's spirit for a long, long time. So this is the fruition of that. Finally, it's the perfect time in December 2017. You probably saw the pictures on Facebook here and on my wife's Facebook page that we celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary with a renewal of our vows. And this was a perfect time to go ahead and launch this project finally, because you know what, you can wish for things, but you know what, if you don't actually do them, then they'll sort of bind up in your spirit, and that's not how you want to do it. You actually want to get things done. Again, and if I could use whatever talents I have here on the live stream side to get what's in my wife's spirit out, that's good for me. Anyway.
Yes. And actually how this started is that people that I work with in the community and so forth have
Heathens, all of them.
Always ask me, and I say, well, I've been married 28 years. I've been married 29 years. And then finally this 30 year. And people say, well, how did you do it? And it's
like it's flying.
Yeah.
I've actually learned to fly.
Really, it's
Ready?
Just year by year, you just do it. But with the help of the Lord. And we are godly people. And God placed it upon my heart that you need to help people who are struggling, or help people who have these questions and want to know, how did you make it through life? And it's a trial and error thing, people. Nobody's perfect. I mean, we've had our times, and even though most of the time I am right, we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, and I have apologized, and he's made mistakes, and he has apologized over and over and over and over.
Because that's how it is. People who get their relationship advice from people like Oprah Winfrey, who's been shacking up with Stedman, and I think she killed what's his face, the singer.
Luther
Vandross. Did she kill Luther Vandross? Because it was on again, off again, on again, off again, on again, off again, and it was Stedman. So people who get their advice from people who don't have decent relationships, or people who get their advice from the Hollywood types or the Hollyweird types, it's like the people who get their child rearing advice from people who don't have kids.
Yes.
You've never had a 4-year-old in your house, and you're going to tell me what to do with a 4-year-old? It's like asking somebody how to taking driving lessons from somebody who can't drive. It's dumb. Yes. So take it. Take advice. Whatever advice that we offer. Take it, leave it. You know what? Like my friend Ralph says. Eat the chicken, throw away the bone. But know that we are somebody who's been doing this continuously for 30 years. People who say they've been married 30 years, but not to the same person, you don't get like 5-6-year marriages and say, I've been married 30 years. That doesn't really count. Actually, that's actually less than 30 years. So it's important that you find the correct advice or the correct mentorship from people who have done it, people who know what they're doing. Have gone through it anyway. Not that we are, like my wife said, not that we're geniuses and we know exactly what we're doing. And everything we tell you, if you take it to heart, you're going to be married 30 years. Maybe. Maybe. If that's what you want. But definitely don't take advice from people who are not married to start with, who have never been married, who've never had decent relationships, who seem to be in and out of relationships all the time. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. we're going to talk about dating today, I think.
Dating.
Kind of at the beginning of the process where most people screw it up.
Yes. And to be quite honestly, I screwed it up a couple of times because a lot of us don't have parents that could teach us how you are supposed to date, because we listen to the world, and you think the world has it right. You try this and try that and try this and go out with this person, or I'm going to try being a lesbian, or I'm going to try to be gay, right? Whatever, people are trying it to see if they are satisfied. And we have found, as we go through our spiritual walk with church, the people that are starting out, I feel that it's the right way. I mean, so my title today is, are you dating as a sport versus dating with a purpose? Do you want to get married, or is your purpose to ultimately find your life partner, or are you dating just to be dating? And dating as a sport usually doesn't work out too well.
No, not at all. The idea is that those that date a sport become used up, become confused, become frustrated, and that's not leading to anything. But anytime you're involved in something that's not leading to anything, all the bad stuff comes with it. Like if you have a job and it's just sort of a no-end job, doesn't really do anything. You sort of go around in circles and doesn't really lead to anything else. You don't find it fulfilling. So there's no way that you can find dating fulfilling if it doesn't lead to anywhere. Personally, I think my wife benefited from me because I never dated. I just never did. Not that I wasn't cute, because of course I was.
Yes.
And not that I wasn't funny and adorable and all that stuff, because I was. But I just didn't date. I tell people all the time, I had two relationships in my life, and I married the second one, and I could have probably done without the first one. I tell my students that all the time. So what people practice in dating is they practice breaking up. They practice getting it wrong. Often we talk about what the divorce rate in America is, and it's high. And I don't know if it's quite 50%, because that's what people say, but it's too high as it is. If you can develop a whole cottage industry of divorce lawyers, people who only do divorces, is probably too high. And it's because people have practiced breaking up. We let 11-year-olds have boyfriends and girlfriends, and that's not going anywhere. This is not Little House on the Prairie. We know that's not going anywhere. That's going to end up in somebody crying their eyes out one night.
He doesn't like me anymore.
He didn't like you to start with. But you know what? So it's crazy. So I don't know why parents put their children through that kind of nonsense, but they do, and they put themselves through that kind of nonsense, thinking that that's the way to do it. So we're going to look at this a little differently this morning. Maybe what some of the things that we're going to say over the next couple of weeks are things that run antithetical to what pop culture says you ought to do, what pop science says psychology says you ought to do, but we're just looking at what we've seen people go through and the hurt and the misery people have gone through, and we probably find that a lot of times they've all gone down the same path.
Yes.
So if that road has a big dog on it, and people who've been bit by that dog, if you let somebody else get bit by that same dog, you're an accomplice, and we're not going to be accomplice.
Yes.
We're not going to be an accomplice. We're not. You hear me, Oprah? Oh, I'm sorry.
Leave Oprah alone.
That's another show. Sorry.
That's your show.
That's my show, where I talk bad about Oprah. That's all I'll do. I have a 24-hour show where we talk bad about Oprah.
So where are you in this part? I want people to give us questions, and we will come back with some of our opinions and stuff. But to start it out, dating, I know when I was coming up and I was a teenager, you had that point of time when you became the age that you could date. My dad would say, well, he has to come see you and have to come ask to take you out. You can't be blowing the horn and you run out the door and blah blah blah. And so that age happened to be 16 for us. We were kind of in the country, and that's what you did. But I never really dated in high school, not a serious dating thing, but you had boyfriends, and you like him and he likes you and all this stuff. So I had my trials of heartbreak, just like everybody else does at a young age, because you think that's the one for you when you're 16 and and you're dating. You go to the prom and you go parking and all the things that teenagers do. Well, when our son was a teenager, we thought it was best that for dating you group date. And group dating is when a whole bunch of kids the same age or whatever like that, they get together and they just hang out. Because when you have like-minded people in situations like that, when you have like-minded people, you're more than likely to find somebody who is on the same path as you, have the same goals as you do, and therefore you're going to be you have a life partner possibility there.
Well, yeah, because the truth of the matter is that you will draw the kind of people that you are, and so you want to be around people like you want to be around people that you want to be like. That's it. If you're around people that you're not sure where they are, where they're coming from on any level, spiritual level, or social level, you have to be really, really careful. But if you hang around people like you want to be, you'll be like them, and you will draw people just like you. So if you are a sniveling coward, and if you are somebody who likes to manipulate people, then you will find that person. You will find that person, and your life will be hell. So if you want to be around somebody who is godly, you want to be around someone who is going the same direction as you, then you want to make sure that you hang around those kind of people. And the group dating thing is great in the sense that it's just friends going out, and there's not the pressure. And because in our world there's that pressure, especially between men and women and boys and girls, that something ought to happen. There's some expectations. But if 8 people go to the movies, there aren't any expectations. And that takes the pressure off of everybody, and then you can see who people really are. So that's a really good plan, and I know that a lot of people nowadays, or even back when I was in high school, I guess, like I said, I didn't date in high school, so I ain't know. You know the cool thing about not knowing? Didn't matter.
Yes.
It didn't matter because here's the deal. Scoreboard, 30 years, same person. Scoreboard, I win. So I didn't need to practice all that. So, but now my kids are under that kind of pressure, and there isn't any parental supervision when your young lady drives off in a car with a young man who, quite frankly, doesn't know what he's doing either. He is as scared and as stupid as anybody, and any of the dads who are watching know that the young man is just as dumb as they can be. Because they have all these expectations from their friends and their neighbors and sometimes from their older brothers or sisters of what a quote date ought to be like, and they don't have any clue as to what to do, how to behave, and if the young lady doesn't have a good example of what these dates should be like and how they should go, and she's under a certain pressure too, so that's when horrible things happen. And then they end, and then everybody is distraught. And I'll tell you a secret, the guys are just as distraught as the girls a lot of times, just as distraught, just crushed. Because our egos are very big, but also very fragile. And we'll talk about male ego later in future episodes. But the idea is that the boys screw it up too, so it seems silly to allow your kids, your 15, 16-year-old kids, who just, quite frankly, just a few years ago, just started going to the bathroom in the mall by themselves.
Yes.
to ride off into the night on this date, seemingly to be together. It seems crazy. I mean, because there's this whole idea that, well, you have to practice to know, what kind of people you like. No, really you don't. You really don't. You don't.
God has made us to know exactly what you need to do,
You'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out,
and it'll work out much better.
It'll be all right. You'll be all right.
Yes.
You don't have to practice anything. There's no need for practice.
And when I think about it, we actually group dated ourselves because we were friends before we actually put the romantic part into it. And I think that's what helped us a lot.
It proves that I was adorable. It was cute.
I got to see him and he got to see me in an element where we're not trying to be together. We were just out
With our friends.
with our friends. We worked together at the Pizza Hut.
Pizza Hut.
And
Can't out Pizza the Hut.
and we would all go out after work and, to have, do the things that young adults do, drinking and partaking of things that we probably shouldn't have been doing. But we, at that time, were not mature in our walk with God.
We were having, we had a good time. I don't think a lot of us were God people, but we were good folks. We didn't get into any big trouble. I'm not saying that we were hanging out robbing liquor stores or anything. Oh, that's fun. Let's go out and rob the liquor store. Big joke. No, we didn't do any of that kind of stuff. But probably not a lot of things that we would suggest folks do now. But we did group. I mean, we did, and I guess it was group dating, but I think it was more hanging out because we were all friends. We were all working in the same place. We're all about the same age. Some of us were from the same part. We had friends from the same part of the state at the time. You had some friends who were working there from where you grew up there, and I had some friends there that we shared that grew up in this part of the state. We didn't know each other beforehand, but we grew up in this part of the state, so we had some things in common. And I think that probably worked out best, as opposed to looking for someone to date. And we see that all the time. We see people frustrated. We see adults frustrated because they can't find anybody to date. We see 50 and 60-year-old people frustrated because they can't go on a date.
But sitting at home every Friday, Saturday night, sitting at home wondering, expecting somebody to, their knight in shining armor, to knock on the front door.
I think they've knocked on our front door. Let me get the door. I'll fill up with knights with shining armor. We're all full up. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming.
But that knight in shining armor is not going to show up at your front door unless you are pursuing him. So dating with a purpose I was thinking about, there's the teenage years, there's the young adult years, there is the midlife years, and then there are some people that are in their sunsets and they're looking for companionship. And but you're not going to find them sitting at home. Maybe on the internet at home. I guess you could.
Doing this? Hi.
But you've got to figure out a plan. When you get into your twilight years and you want to have a spouse, you can't just expect it to happen like it did when you were 20 years old. You've got to get out there. You've got to make yourself known. And I'm not opposed to online dating. I know people that have met online and they have had great marriages. I mean, if you do it the right way, there's nothing wrong with that.
We're getting paid for these people, for this online service?
No, we're not.
Never mind. We have a question though.
Okay.
This is from our friend Gary James Knight, who's one of the guys, quite frankly, who I believe did it right.
Yes.
Rock on, Gary. The question is for you, because nobody wants to ask me anything. What's your advice to girls about how to protect themselves from being taken advantage of?
Well, first of all, if you have your father in your life, listen to your father. I was blessed enough to have my father treat me like a queen, treat me like a lady. Or if you have
she grew up like an only child like me.
I wasn't an only child.
But she grew up like an only child like me. She was a princess.
I was the only one there at the end because I was a surprise baby. But if you have your father in your life, how he treats your mother, with respect. Yes, opening the doors and pulling out chairs for you and different things like that. Look for that in a guy. But to protect yourself, Don't be out. Don't. I mean, if you're young, maybe you shouldn't be in the car with a young man if you're 16. That's my opinion. The group dating. I think you should be with this person on a group date so that you can see how he reacts with his friends, how he reacts with other girls. If he's talking trash to other girls and stuff like that, but he's nice to you just because he likes you per se, then you may want to question going out and being alone with this young gentleman.
He may not be a gentleman. The idea
Yes.
is, from my standpoint is, I teach saxophone, flute, and clarinet. And I've been doing it for 32 years, and most of my students are young ladies. And I always tell the girls, leave those boys alone until they can buy you a house.
Exactly.
I tell the boys, leave those girls alone until you want to buy them a house. But Dave makes a great point. If this young man doesn't treat people in general and other young ladies and yourself as well as your father does, if your father's a good example, then you should probably avoid them. Your personal safety, frankly, is your personal responsibility. Do not put yourself in the compromising situations. You know what? Inside of us, everybody has something that ticks us a little bit, and that we go, I don't really feel good about that. Mm-hmm. If you don't, then follow that instinct. I think you posted something yesterday about follow your gut. If it seems like it's going to be something that you're not really comfortable with, then listen to that voice. And sometimes the peer pressure voice is a lot louder. I understand that, but most of the time, and that's the crazy part. Most of the time, we do know.
You feel it in your gut.
We can protect ourselves by our gut a lot of times. If it doesn't feel right, then don't do it. Don't push through that, because we can do that. We can push through that, but don't push through it. Just say, well, I don't think I'm going to go. I'm not going to go tonight. I don't feel good, or whatever. Make an excuse. Lie. I don't know. Don't do it. Protect yourself.
Yes, protect yourself.
Because ultimately, whatever experience that you might have, quote, missed, is not as important as your own safety or being taken advantage of. So make sure that you listen to your gut, and be very, very aware of your surroundings. Make sure you know where you are. Make sure you know the people where you are. Never go off with anybody and not tell anybody.
And another thing that I heard a comedian say the other week is that don't dress the part of
a whore.
I didn't want to say it, but
I did.
Don't dress
being a
the part of
being a whore's uniform. You may not be a whore, but you're wearing the uniform.
So you and I, this is old fashioned. I know, we want to wear and look good and all this stuff but you can look good, but be modest. Don't advertise your goodies, out there if you are not ready to give them up.
And nobody's saying that anybody deserves to be attacked because of the way they're dressed. Nobody's saying that. But the problem comes in is that how we and young people don't realize this, because young people normally get they get a pass in all the ridiculous behavior because we all did. Is that however your dress sort of portrays to people who you are, rightly or wrongly. Rightly or wrongly, and that's something that unfortunately we've been, society has been pushing down that narrative isn't true. Unfortunately, it's very, very true, and I can prove it. I can prove it any time. If somebody is dressed in a business suit, standing there on the street reading a newspaper, and ask you for the time, you're probably going to talk to them. If they're dressed like a bum, sitting on the street reading the same newspaper and asking for the time, you're probably going to walk by them.
Exactly.
Which is crappy, which makes you a crappy person.
Yes.
I'm gonna tell you, it makes you a crappy person. But that's how that's how you're probably going to react, and it's only because of how they're dressed.
If If you see somebody out there with a uniform on that looks like a policeman and has the badge and all this stuff like this, and you lost your child, you're going to run up to that person and say, "Can you help me? Can you help me?" And
you're not going to get the bum who's reading a newspaper and go, "Hey, put down that bottle of Muscatel. You see my kid?" You're probably not going to do that. Why? Because unfortunately or unfortunately, that's how it is. Because the Bible says that man does look at the exterior, and that doesn't change. Mm-hmm. That doesn't change because of social norms. Because we are hardwired that way, and I'll tell you what, it isn't always fair. It isn't always right because sometimes we get it wrong. Millionaires have figured out. People like Howard Hughes have figured out that they can be left alone if they look like crap, because it works. It works. Because people do look at the exterior. They do.
So just be cautious of what you wear, young ladies. If you you are going out on a date or group dating or whatever like that, because you, as he said, you may not be a whore, but
you're wearing the uniform.
You're wearing the uniform.
So the idea is, and I know, I already told you. I told you a few minutes ago that some of the things that we're going to say to you, you're not going to like. You're not. I mean, you're going to think they're not fair. You're going to think all that stuff. I said that, and I told you, but that's the deal. That's unfortunately or fortunately how people work. And a lot of times people say, "I don't understand." Well, it's like you're not trying to understand, because nothing. The horrible thing and the great thing is that nothing has changed.
And the sad part is, sometimes even if you know a person for years and years and marry them and whatever like that, sometimes things come out in people that can shock you. I was listening to the news the other night where this young lady was married to this elder of a church, and he murdered her. I mean, you don't know what people have within them that from years ago, or what they're harboring, or what they're putting down and stuff. You don't know what can come out in somebody. So keep God in your life.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, the spiritual side of this is very, very important, because that's the part that, like my friend Gary was asking the question before, one of the ways to protect yourself is to get allies, and the best ally is the Holy Spirit. Christ is your best ally, because he's always going to have, he's always out in front. He's always going to have your rear guard always, because that's going to be very, very important moving on. And I know, again, for a lot of people who pshaw and eye roll, all that stuff, I'm telling you, I've watched so many people be, and we're using this word yesterday, and I don't want to use this in too negative a sense, but being carnal. And all I mean by being carnal is being natural, being, just depending on the human side of themselves. I don't mean carnal like being evil, but just using the human side of themselves.
More than the spiritual.
Well, because they don't have any, they may not have any, or think they don't have any spiritual side, but just using whatever human side or human resources they have. And we find out that a lot of times those human resources that we have, especially when you're 14, are lacking, are so much lacking. It's incredible that in our culture we have, our culture says that a 14-year-old can make these really adult decisions, but we call kids who are people who are in college, who are 21 and 22, we still call them kids. Mm-hmm. However, 14-year-olds can make these really important decisions about who they date and when they go on dates and what to wear and all that stuff that parents just sort of go, okay, and thinking, well, they're just going through a stage and all that stuff. Well, and a lot of times, again, I've taught for 32 years privately, a lot of these kids are going through torture. They're going through hell out there. And their parents have sort of taken this laissez-faire sort of approach and thinking that, well, it's just how kids are.
At that age.
At that age. As opposed to taking a more, being an ally for them and being, because they need you, kids, they need you to be an ally. They need you. They may fight you on it. They may eye roll you and suck their tongue and all that stuff, but they need you desperately to be their ally in this whole, in this whole thing. And even if you seem like the mean parent, the mean mom, or the mean dad, it'll pay off in the long run. when we started work, I started working at Bloomingdale. Was talking to a parent there who I thought had two really good kids, and I asked them. This is before we even had Alex. How do they have such good kids? And the first thing he said to me was, first of all, don't let anybody else raise your kids. Be the mean dad. Don't let anybody else raise your kids. And I took that as don't let media, and we see a lot of media because we see all the celebrities all hugged up on each other at 13 and 14 because their agents push them together because it's cute and it makes great magazine covers. Don't let anybody else raise your kids. Don't be afraid to be the mean dad. And he said this, and it struck thunder in my spirit. He said, because here's the deal. When the police knock on somebody's door every night to ask parents to come identify the body. And all the people who said you were being too strict, that you were being too old-fashioned, all that stuff, none of them will be there. It'll just be you and your wife. Mm-hmm. And I was like, crap, John. I didn't think that was that. I didn't think we were getting that heavy. But it's true. But you know what? As I got older, and you know, when our son got older, I found out that that's the truth. And I started working in school systems, finding out that kids die. So it was really. So I think that's really important that parents enter all of that, and maybe enter that a little bit more heavy-handedly than society or pop culture says to. Because after all, they are your kids. After all, they're not somebody else's kids. I don't care what Melissa Harvey or whoever it was on MSNBC says. These are your children. These are not society's children. These are your children that you're putting in cars or you're sending off somewhere out into the dark somewhere with some boy or with basically somebody you don't know. So these are your children. And unless we take control of that, then whatever happens to them kind of becomes your fault. We've got some folks here that I know. Hey, Sarah Lynn Voss, and Annie Caroline Conley. And Annie is a great advice because her mom, she was a kid who's at Music Showcase, and I've known her since she was a little girl. Her mom is the real deal. Her mom didn't put up with any crap at all. None, zero. And it's worked out. And she's had a great support system, and it's worked out for her. She just graduated from the University of Tampa. Go T. And so does Sarah Lynn Voss. Sarah Lynn Voss is a nurse and had parents who were very, very involved in her life, and through this whole experience. And because both of these young ladies that I happen to know personally here who are watching had exactly what we're talking about, they've turned out to be really good young people. Young adults who have their heads turned, screwed on straight. So that's really the deal. Parents, stay involved in your kids' lives. Don't just send them off. Keep that leash. What else you got?
Well, we went over teen dating.
We did.
And the young adult years, that's when you can kind of go, what I want to say.
I don't know.
Out on your own, kind of. Maybe it depends on the maturity of how these people, because sometimes people, especially young men, don't mature as fast as ladies. And like my husband said, young men get hurt, and they hide it in different ways, but.
Usually bad ways. Usually through drinking and fighting, and prostitutes. So it's usually very, very bad. When men get their heart broken, it's usually very, very bad.
And that can affect the way that their future mates live with them. I mean, if you have baggage from back when you were a freshman in college, where this young lady treated you so bad and dogged you out and stuff, you may have a bad taste in your mouth toward women, and and the next person gets treated.
Yeah, people get the people and people are just afraid if they get treated badly, they're just afraid to get treated badly again. When the stove is hot and you get burned, you don't want to touch it again. So a lot of people and guys especially end up being very reserved about about sharing a lot of their feelings to start with. But if they've been dogged out, then they're going to be even more reserved. And we'll talk about this in future episodes as well. The whole idea of sharing your feelings, because if guys, first of all, the male species doesn't do that very well to start with, except for people like me who are very communicative. I talk a lot. I talk a lot. We were talking about at church how many words men speak in a day and women speak in a day.
Women 25,000, men
dudes
7,000.
So dudes don't hardly ever talk, because we have all sorts of nonverbal communications like
he's different.
Sup. It's not even a word. Sup. And what that means is, how are you doing? I'm doing well. Hey, did you have a good day? Yes. The same word was exchanged, like aloha. Sup. Sup. All that means is all the stuff I said that you could have used 14 or 15 words to say. You only use 2 between 2 people. It's very efficient. So sharing your feelings is something that you don't really get to do, so you don't know how to. And I think what women have to understand, again, we'll talk about this in future episodes as well, is that's part of the male that's part of the male condition. So if you get hurt early in college and you don't share that in a relationship that you're in, that will bubble to the surface at some point. So when you're dating in college and all that stuff, you got to have even more purpose, and this is something that you want to talk about. Even if you're 21, you're running out of years. Not just to get married, you're running out of years to live. Yes. Okay? Because you got more years to live at 14 than you do at 21. That makes sense? Because you're not going to live to be 1,000. You're not Methuselah. So you don't have forever. So you got to start being more serious and dating more for purpose than sport in college, in those college years, because you don't have much more time, and you got to get your life started. And if relationships and marriage are going to be part of your life, you really got to start being directed. I don't think that you have to have checklists. And that's about check.
Yeah,
that's about
you don't have to have a checklist of he has to be tall, he has to be college educated, he has to be handsome, he has to be this and that and all this stuff like that, and nobody's going to fit your total checklist unless God just make you a man just for you, and nobody's going to make that total checklist. You got to give and take on some things, because you know what, he may be making a checklist and you don't meet all those guidelines either. So making a checklist, I think, you have to have guidelines. I mean, you have to have somebody who's like-minded with you, but be a little lenient, because you're not going to find somebody who's going to meet that whole checklist. There are several women out there waiting and still looking for that checklist. And a lot of men too, if they made their own checklist, they're still waiting for somebody to make that checklist, and that person doesn't exist.
Yeah, the whole checklist thing is, for me, it's kind of silly, really, because you've put this person in this little box, and you're running around looking for that, those set of requirements. Well, you're probably missing out on your blessing at some point, because a lot of times your blessing doesn't look like you think it's going to look. It's going to be short, but it's going to be cute.
And you're going to talk a lot.
Going to talk a lot. Going to be able to share. Going to be able to listen.
You can't get a word in edgewise.
But of course you can, because you do all the time. Because you do all the time. But so it's going to be. So the package may look entirely different than the package that you've designed in your head, and I think that leads into what we're talking about, sunset dating, because that's even worse. And we've got this whole narrative in pop culture that women have, that if you don't have the person that's on your checklist, you're somehow settling for less. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Well, I ain't gonna settle. Mm-hmm. I said, well, someone
you're going to be alone.
Someone have to settle for you, because you know.
And in the sunset years, you can't expect. Well, I don't want him to have no children, and I don't want him to have no ex-wife, and I don't want you too old to
So
expect people.
if you're 55 or 56 or 60 years old, and you're looking for somebody who is age appropriate, you want someone who's been single and celibate for the past 40 years? That's who the person you want to hook up with? That person doesn't exist. And if he does exist, yeah, you don't want to hang. I mean, you probably don't.
Because everybody comes with baggage. I mean, in your 20s, you may have a little tote bag. In your mid ages, you may have a carry-on. But when you get into them 50s and beyond,
you get a full Samsonite. You have a full Samsonite luggage thing. The same thing they give out on The Price is Right.
Right. Yeah, you have some baggage with you, and you're carrying around trunks sometimes when you're like in your late 50s. So you got to be cognizant to knowing that you're not going to get somebody who's perfect. Either way. I mean, that's when the spiritual aspect comes in where, because for years, I'm going to be honest, for years I kept praying to the Lord, why does he have to be this? Why do he have to do this? Please, Lord, change him. Please, Lord, change him. I want this and I want that. What about you? Are you going to change? That's what the Lord told me. You need to change. You change your aspect and your ways, and then those other things will work out for themselves. Trust God in those issues. So don't thinking that baggage is not going to come. It's kind of...
Anybody who's lived at all has baggage. And you know what? And baggage is such a negative term. It's just life. Wherever you are, you bring your life with you. You bring all your past successes. You bring all your past failures. You bring all the people who've been in your life in the past. You bring them with you. Wherever you are, there is what we call baggage, and baggage, of course, is a bad term, but it's just your life. You bring your life with you. Like Mercer says, wherever you go, there you are, and all the things that are you are there. So there's no perfect anything because you're there, and if you're not perfect, then the situation the situation's not perfect, and to have this expectation that there's going to be that you're going to find the quote perfect person. First of all, that perfect person died on a cross 2018 years ago plus that. So that person doesn't even exist. So I think when people started getting those lists, especially in the sunset years, I think they're just lying. I don't think they really are interested.
They don't really want someone. And they think they're supposed to because everybody, questions, well, how long you've been single for a while and blah, 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 and people ask you all the things like that.
It's peer pressure,
yes,
isn't it?
It's peer pressure in the twilight years. And it's okay if you don't want to be with anybody. Don't feel like you have to be with someone, even if you're a young person and you don't feel like you want to be married or have a companion and all this stuff. Like, it's not a necessary thing. Jesus didn't have anybody.
Nope. No matter what the books and the movies say, Jesus did not have a girlfriend.
No, he did not.
He was busy. He had a career. He's a career dude. He had a career.
And a short time to do it in.
Yeah. He had only like 3 years, and he had a bunch of business partners. They had stuff done. He didn't have time for all that. And Debbie's right. Please don't feel pressured into having a relationship. And I know when you start to be in your 20s, all your friends get married off, and you're like, "What's wrong with me?" Mm-hmm. And it's like anything else. Then you start to press. Then you start to force things to happen. You start to ignore your gut on certain things, and that's when a lot of people end up in marriages that last for a year and a half, and you end up in debt that lasts for 25 years because you spent $75,000 on that marriage, and before you get the first set of bills, you're already thinking, how the hell do I get out of this? Mm-hmm. Because you pressed. Everybody, you went to 4 or 5 other weddings. If you're a guy, you wore the suit and the shoes that don't fit. If you're a girl, you wore the ugly bridesmaid dresses you might have worn 4 or 5 times, and you start to worry about yourself. Don't. My advice is don't. It'll happen the way it's supposed to happen.
Or their biological clock is ticking, and they want to have kids.
Adopt. Do not let that control if you want children, that's awesome, but don't let that deter, because that could really badly affect the environment that you bring these children up in. If your marriage sucks and you're going to bring a child into a relationship environment that sucks, I wonder if you really like kids at all. Do you like children? Yeah, let's bring them into hell.
Children are not going to make a marriage better. Children put a lot of pressure.
They make them worse.
Marriage.
They make them worse. Worse. Because children are a pain in the ass. It makes
nice. Children are a blessing.
But they do put additional pressures on any relationship because of their nature, because they become the central focus. They become the central focus of everything you have to do. You can't just simple stuff. You can't just say, "Hey, let's go to the mall and get in the car and go to the mall." No, there's another 45 minutes because there's all other stuff you have to prepare to do.
The accessories.
You gotta take all the stuff. You gotta take all the stuff. You have any Cheerios? Make sure you get the bag of Cheerios out of the cupboard. I think we're out of Cheerios. Oh crap! That means we can't go to the mall because you can't go. They put a lot of pressure, a lot of financial pressures, just a lot of social pressures, because you have another human being in the house that you are now responsible for. So that is not going to be the hallmark moment where everybody gathers around the baby and go, "Oh, we're more in love now than ever." Not that first month.
No, because you're not sleeping.
Because no one's sleeping, and if you've never been crapped on, get used to that. So that's a really bad thing that people do. I've got to do the TECM program at 10:05, so we're going to bail out here in a little bit. I hope that we share this and it's something that you like. We'd love to hear comments and emails. You can send me an email at wls860@gmail.com, and you can comment here whenever you see this. I mean, a lot of people are working or doing stuff at 9 o'clock, especially on a holiday. Some of y'all slept.
Or at an MLK parade.
Or at the MLK parade in Chicago when it's 4 degrees. Yes, parades. But so you might have to see this later. And
I will be posting this on my Facebook page.
Yep.
And once we get more organized and everything, we are going to set up a YouTube channel.
Organized?
Yes, organized. I'm an organized person. Planner.
I'm not a planner.
And
can we go? Let's do it now. Let's go now.
I hope that this was something that is going to help people. And if you have further questions, feel free to hit us up on Facebook for right now. And like I said, we're gonna set up a YouTube channel. That's been my heart to share this in as many avenues as we can. And I feel like we go through life challenges and things in life so that we can help the next person. Like you said, with the harassment and all that stuff that's going on, a lot of those women, if they had have come out earlier, they could have saved so many other women from going through what they went through.
How many people have we not heard of that went through, that had their dreams crushed and their lives ruined that we've never heard of? Mm-hmm. Because some of the people that we've heard of didn't say anything, didn't take the shot, didn't take the chance. So there are so many other people who could have been, who were probably damaged by these people in ways that we'll never know about. So if you've got information, if you think you can help.
I've learned a long time ago that life is not just about you. You're here for a reason. And if my purpose is to be able to, if I can help other people make it through this life easier, make it through their marriage, and their dating and their whatever life purposes that you have going on right now, even financially and different things. I work in the finance industry. If I can help people in any kind of way, that's what I want to do. It's not all about Debbie and Willie anymore. It's about others and meeting that purpose out in life.
Yeah, just do what I tell you, you'll be okay. What? What? That's 32 years teaching kids. You go, just do what I tell you. Promise you. Promise. But no, in all seriousness, if we could use our 30 plus years of experience in relationships with each other, to offer anybody a helping hand or any small explanation of why something may be happening, or something to look forward to. So when it does happen, you go, oh. Yeah, I've seen that before. I heard that this may be the situation, that you can get through another day, and that you can be better on the other side. We're happy to do it. We are thrilled to do it because apparently this is what we're supposed to be doing. You know how I know that? Because we're doing it. We're not planning to do it anymore. No. We're actually doing it.
And I am not a very outgoing person. And I've gotten better in my later years.
Thanks to me.
I have always been a very timid, very quiet, private. I like to keep things private, even from my family sometimes. I'm a private person. And that has got to stop. It's time to...
I think it just did.
Yes.
Congratulations.
So
something I've been asking for 30 plus years, but here
this is the new Debbie of 2018.
All right.
And it's time to change.
Listen, we got to get out of here and make room for somebody else. So until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We'll see you when we see you. Peace.
Bye.